Senate roll call. Day 14, Monday, January 30th, 2023. Anderson? Here. Baldwin? Here. Barlow? Here. Beitman? Here. Boner? Here. Bouchard? Here. Brennan? Here. Case? Present. Cooper? Here. Dockstetter? Here. Ellis? French? Here. Purphy? Here. Guru? Here. Hicks? Here. Hutchings? Here. Ide? Here. Jones? Here. Kinski? Here. Cole? Present. Landon? Here. Larson? Here. McEwen? Excuse, Nethercott? Here. Pappas? Here. Rothfuss? Here. Salazar? Here. Schuler? Here. Scott? Here. Steinmetz? Here. President Driscoll?
Here.
30 present, 1 excused.
Prayer by Reverend Mark Marston of First United Methodist Church in Cheyenne.
Let us pray. Our Lord in heaven, as we begin this new week, our Lord, we ask you to invigorate these men and women with your Holy Spirit, that they may know that the work before them is touched by you. Shine your light upon them, that they may know that they do this task before you, but they are not alone. Enlighten and enliven them, that they may walk in the knowledge, knowing that they are not the first or the last to occupy this chamber, to walk these halls, or to be called to this work, that you were with those who went before them, and you will be with those who go after them, that they too have been blessed by you. For these things we pray through Jesus Christ. Amen and amen.
Senator Brennan, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Senator Salazar. Oh, I'm looking here. There we go.
Mr. President, members of the body, on a privilege of the floor, Mr. President.
Granted.
Thank you. Mr. President and members of the Senate, on Friday, in the heat of debate, I chose some words that were very ill-chosen. And I want to apologize to the Senate, to those who know me. It was not in my character, and I take this action freely, and I hope you will forgive me. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Salazar. Words taken to heart, and we appreciate that very much. I think everybody in the body does. Thank you. Doctor of the day, Senator Baldwin. Again.
What about Barlow?
You know, we use the vet for the heavy stuff. We use you for general health. So, today in Wyoming history, it's hard to believe this is history. 150 elk are transferred to Lincoln County in hopes of relieving overpopulation of elk in the Jackson Hole area, 1944. Sometimes history repeats itself. The biggest communication problem is we do not listen to understand, we listen to reply. Would you like me to do that one more time? Biggest communication problem is we do not listen to understand, we listen to reply. Keep that in mind as we go through the debates today. Today's the first reading is the budget bill in the committee of a whole. Tomorrow at 5 p.m. is deadline for second reading amendments on Senate File 1, the budget bill. And Friday is the last day for the bill to be reported out of committee in the House of Origin. One other announcement, the forms will be here shortly. A majority of the Senate has not filled out their ethics disclosure for the Secretary of State's office. Secretary of State called this morning. Those are due tomorrow, and there's severe penalties if you don't do it. So we'll get the forms. You actually will be able to get them off the table up here, fill them out, and we'll take them back over to them if you do it. See, if you don't want to do them electronically or scan them, but you do need to have them. Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just as a point of clarity on this topic, perhaps leadership or the body could ask the office to provide us confirmation of the receipt of our ethics forms that have been submitted. I know I submitted mine. I am hearing some concern from previous legislators that they are being asked to provide their forms again from last year, even though I'm aware those legislators are under the impression that they did in fact submit those forms. And so just seeking some confirmation from the office concerning those of us who have submitted or will submit our ethics forms, so that's very clear.
I can get those. I didn't ask him when he called this morning, but they've got an actual list. I didn't know if I wanted to go that level, but I will get it for you, Senator. Thank you. Reading, correction, and approval of the journal.
Mr. President, the Journal of January 27, 2023 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Senator Larson, Chairman.
Are there any objections? Being none, the report is adopted. Senator Larson.
Mr. President, privilege, floor.
You have it.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is my honor to introduce a special young man from my area. His name is Mr. Owen Fink. He's a senior at the Powell High School. He's here to learn how legislators really work at the state level. Owen served as a page in the Senate for a semester last year, sponsored by Senator Barrasso. So he's here to see how we really work. He competed in Skills USA national competition a couple years ago, representing our state in job interview competition. Owen is very excited to help in our chamber for the next 2 weeks. Please welcome Owen Fink.
Welcome to Senator Owen. We're pleased to have you here. Teach us a few fun things, would you? So. Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. President. Privilege of the floor.
Granted.
Thank you. I'm honored to say that Senator Larson, Senator French, and myself, all three, represent parts of the school district up there where this Owen is from, and what a great school district and what a great bunch of kids they have up there. They're just a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Great to hear. Thank you. Messages from the House.
From the House of Representatives, message number 156, January 27, 2023. Mr. President, the following bills passed the House on third reading by the votes indicated. House Bill number 56, Purple Star Schools, ayes 61, excused 1. Message number 159, January 27, 2023. House Bill number 106, Eminent Domain Wind Energy Collector Systems, ayes 41, noes 20, excused 1. From the House of Representatives, message number 155, January 27, 2023. Mr. President, the following bills passed the House on third reading in an amended form by the votes indicated. House Bill number 20, Land Exchanges Priority, ayes 52, noes 9, excused 1. Message number 161, January 27, 2023. House Bill number 34, School Finance Mental Health Services, ayes 35, noes 26, excused 1. Message number 157, January 27, 2023. House Bill number 79, Voter ID Concealed Carry Permit, ayes 61, excused 1. Message number 158, January 27, 2023. House Bill number 104, Hunting of Predatory Animals Amendments, ayes 54, noes 7, excused 1. Message number 160, January 27, 2023. Mr. President, House Bill number 111, endangering children, fentanyl. Ayes 59, noes 2, excused 1. Message number 162, January 27, 2023, House Bill number 74, Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund. Ayes 35, noes 26, excused 1. Message number 163, January 27, 2023, House Bill number 181, Online Sports Wagering Amendments. Ayes 53, noes 8, excused 1. Signed, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Randy. Senate File 1, first reading of the bill.
Senate File 1, General Government Appropriations 2, sponsored by the Appropriations Committee.
Pursuant to Joint Rule 14-1B, Senate File 1 is referred directly to Committee of the Whole. Reports from standing committees.
January 27, 2023, Mr. President, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred Senate File 129, Background Checks, Governor's Office, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Case, Cooper, Furphy, Landon, and Schuler. Senator Landon, Chairman. January 27, 2023, Mr. President, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred Senate File 167, Domestic Violence Protection Hearings Remote Appearance, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Case, Cooper, Furphy, Landon, and Schuler. Senator Landon, Chairman. January 27, 2023, Mr. President, Committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred Senate File 80, Visitation Rights, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Barlow, Bouchard, Dockstader, and Hutchings. Senator Baldwin, Chairman. January 27, 2023, Mr. President, Committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred Senate File 111, Child Abuse, Change of Sex, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Bouchard, Dockstader, and Hutchings. Noes, Senators Barlow and Baldwin. Senator Baldwin, Chairman. January 27, 2023, Mr. President, Committee number 4, Education, to whom was referred Senate File 174, Wyoming Charter School Authorizing Board, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Beitman, Brennan, Scott, and Steinmetz. No, Senator Rothfuss. Senator Steinmetz, Acting Chairman. January 27, 2023, Mr. President, Committee number 4, Education, to whom is referred Senate File 132, Study of K-12 Education Program, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Beitman, Brennan, Rothfuss, Scott, and Steinmetz. Senator Scott, Chairman. January 27, 2023, Mr. President, Committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred Senate File 120, Restoration of Civil Rights, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Furphy, Landon, and Schuler. Excused, Senator Case. Senator Landon, Chairman. January 27, 2023, Mr. President, Committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom was referred Senate File 43, EMS Districts, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Barlow, and Dockstader. No, Senators Bouchard and Hutchings. Senator Baldwin, Chairman. January 27, 2023, Mr. President, Committee number 9, Minerals, Business, and Economic Development, to whom was referred Senate File 154, Energy Authority, Project Financing, Refineries. Respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Dockstader, Ellis, Jones, and Rothfuss. Senator Dockstader, Chairman. January 30, 2023, Mr. President, Committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred Senate Joint Resolution 9, Right of Individual Privacy, Constitutional Amendment. Respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Case, Cooper, Furphy, Landon, and Schuler. Senator Landon, Chairman.
Randy. Senator Scott.
Mr. President, Senate File 132, Study of K-12 Education Program that was just read in, does have an appropriation and pursuant to Senate rules, I ask it be re-referred to committee number 2.
Without objection, so ordered. Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. Senate File 120, Restoration of Civil Rights, has an administrative impact. I would ask that it be re-referred to the Appropriations Committee. Thank you.
Without objection, so ordered. Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Looking at our workload on committee number 3 and discussing it with the good chair of Ag, I would ask that get a couple bills re-referred out of my committee. Senate File 148, Preemption of Local Firearms Regulation. I ask that be re-referred to Ag.
Without objection, so ordered.
Without objection, thank you, sir. Without objection, Senate File 149, Enhanced Concealed Carry Permit for Improved Reciprocity. I ask without objection that would be re-referred to Ag.
Without objection, so ordered.
And Senate File 150, Capital Carry. Without objection, I'd ask that be re-referred to Ag, please.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President, because I can't help myself. This will be the first time in 6 years that a gun bill has not gone to the Judiciary Committee. At least 6. From the good former Chairman Christensen as well before me on that committee. Certainly a change in this body. I wish the Ag Committee well.
Thank you. Bills on third reading, final passage. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, do you have a consent list? Excuse me, thank you.
Mr. President, privilege of the floor before we get to the third reading consent list.
Granted.
Mr. President, just to kind of give you folks a highlight of what we're going to try to get through today and this week is roughly we have 60 bills, Senate files that are still sitting out there. You have till next Monday that they have to be done in committee of the whole. So you have 6 days, which would mean to process all those Senate files means we got to get through 10 every day in committee of the whole, assuming they come out of committee. You've also got the budget, and you also have CapCon. And so I think the reality that all 6 of those are all 60 of those bills out there are likely gonna make it through committee of the whole is strictly upon how much you guys want to debate. Debate all you want, but that's where we're at. So that's the kind of the big picture for the week. So today what we're gonna do is we're gonna do third reading, and then we're gonna go into the committee of the whole and try to get some bills cranked out. We'll take our normal noon recess. Committees that meet at noon will normally meet. At 2 o'clock, we're gonna take up the supplemental budget bill. Hopefully, we can get through that in 3 hours. My plan is to work till 6 o'clock this evening. So if we get done with the supplemental at 5, we'll go back into the committee or stay in committee of the whole and process some more Senate files. I'd like to get everybody that's got bills out there, get an opportunity to get heard. So that's kind of the process that we're going to use today, Mr. President, as we work through those. And with that, Mr. President, we do have a consent list. That consent list is Senate File 128, Transfer of State Land Exchanges, Senate File 130, Educational Freedom Act, Senate File 158, Public Employees Retirement Plan Contributions, Senate File 178, Mountain Lion Pursuit Season, Senate Joint Resolution 5, Air Force 75th Anniversary.
Would anybody like any of the bills removed from the consent list? Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the Senate? Senate File 128, Transfer of State Lands Exchange, Senate File 130, Educational Freedom Act, Senate File 158, Public Employee Retirement Plan Contributions, Senate File 178, Mountain Lion Pursuit Seasons, and Senate Journal 5, Air Force 75th Anniversary, passed the Senate. The chief clerk will call the roll.
On the consent list, Anderson. Baldwin. Barlow. Beitman. Boner. Bouchard. Brennan. Case. Cooper. Cooper, no. Dockstetter. Ellis. Ellis, no. French. Murphy. Grew. Hicks.
Aye.
Hutchings. Ide. Jones. Kinsky.
Aye.
Kolb. Landon. Larson. McEwen. Excused. Nethercott. Pappas. Rothfuss. Salazar. Schuler. Scott. Steinmetz. President Driscoll.
Aye.
On the consent list, 28 aye, 2 no, 1 excused. Senate File 128, are there any changes? Ellis, no to aye. Cooper, no to aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 128. 30 aye, 1 excused. Senate File 130, are there any changes? Rothfuss, aye to no. Pappas, aye to no. Landon, aye to no. Guru, aye to no. Case, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 130, 23 aye, 7 no, 1 excused. Senate File 158, are there any changes? Ellis, no to aye. Rothfuss? Aye to no. Cooper, no to aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 158, 29 aye, 1 no, 1 excused. Senate File 178, are there any changes? Group? Aye to no. Rothfuss? Aye to no. Case? Aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 178, 25 aye, 5 no, 1 excused. Senate Joint Resolution number 5, are there any changes? Ellis, no to aye. Cooper, no to aye. Kolb, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate Joint Resolution number 5, 29 aye, 1 no, 1 excused.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority members elected to the Senate, Senate File 128, Transfer of State Lands Exchange, Senate File 130, Educational Freedom Act, Senate File 158, Public Employee Retirement Plan Contributions, Senate File 178, Mountain Lion Pursuit Seasons, and Senate Journal 5, Air Force 75th Academy, have passed the Senate. Bills on third reading. Senator Dockstader, could you come up? Senate File 92, third reading in the Senate file.
Senate File 92, Small Customer Electrical Generation, sponsored by Senator Case, an act related to net metering.
Senator Case.
There's an amendment.
Read in the amendment, please.
Senate File 92, third reading amendment number 1, page 2, line 1, delete.
Thank you, Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 92 and ask for your favorable consideration. This deals with the issue we discussed on the floor the other day with regards to our cooperative electric utilities. And what this amendment does is make it crystal clear that our cooperative member utilities will be able to set their policies with respect to new net metering installations. So it's a little bit, we had a shorter version that was just going in the session laws, and this actually goes in the actual law, but the meat of it is in Part C. Any cooperative electric utility that is exempt from retail rate regulation by the Public Service Commission under Chapter 17, Title 37 of the Wyoming statute shall not be subject to subsection B of this section, and the Board of Directors of a cooperative electric utility shall, not later than April 1st, 2024, adopt rates, terms, and conditions to compensate small customer generators that are first operational on or after July 1st, 2024. And any cooperative electric utility shall comply with the following. They have to give written notice, Mr. Chairman, and they have to file their rates, but they do that already. And the key part is the Romanet 3, which already applies to their rates, Mr. Chairman. And I think you know this well, being on the board of one, that there is a possibility for customers to raise complaints about rates that can kick it to the PSC. And so that's what it does. Page 7, line 5 is in the session laws. It just says, any cooperative electric utility that is exempt from retail rate regulation shall adopt rates, terms, and conditions to compensate small generators. I think that goes exactly to the issue that we talked about, to allow our great cooperative utilities all across Wyoming to really continue the practice that they have adopted, but to give the protection of the PSC in those cases where there are complaints. And it has to rise to a level of 5% of a customer class, I believe. That's off the top of my head, but I believe that's what it is. Happy to answer any questions, and I hope for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Questions? Third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 92. Questions? Discussion? Ready for the question? Question being called. Third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 92. Roll call.
Wait.
Oh,
Isaac,
voice vote.
voice vote on the amendment.
Yeah, sorry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Amendment passes. She was standing over there like she's ready to mark her vote. Okay. Third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 92. Please read it in, Senator Rothfuss.
Senate File 92, third reading amendment number 2, page 2, line 16, delete.
Senator Rothfuss. Oh, I had you. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 92. That was just distributed, I believe. Mr. Chairman, ask the body's favorable consideration. Mr. Chairman, this is a tweak to the language on page 2, lines 16 through 18. And it really gets at the heart of what the Public Service Commission will base its rate on for future customer generators producing within a regulated utility space. As drafted in the original language, it says the compensation system shall prevent rate subsidization of customer generators by other customers of an electric utility, which is one objective that I think is important, and that's a key concept certainly to the bill as it came forward. I see this though as pushing kind of from one side, and it assumes that under all circumstances, those customer generators in the future will be a liability on the system and effectively only need to be looked at to ensure that there's no subsidization of a traditional regulated consumer. However, that might not be the case. At some point in the future, if there is good customer generation, it actually provides resiliency to the grid and helps support the grid if done right. So, Mr. Chairman, the proposed amendment, instead of phrasing it just from the prevent rate subsidization, it's to go to the core language that's used when the PSC sets any rate. So the amendment would delete prevent rate and the next line and reinsert, or excuse me, and insert language that suggests that it provide for just and reasonable rates, terms, and conditions. So it would read, the compensation system shall provide for just and reasonable rates, terms, and conditions. The intent there is to just go to what the PSC typically uses to calculate rates, which is what's fair. There's a term of art, just and reasonable. And this would provide then an opportunity for them to recognize at some point potential value. It would allow for the possibility of them to look at rates at different times. It basically leaves the doors open so that the PSC can do what they do best, which is set a fair rate. I'd ask for the body's favorable consideration. For me, Mr. Chairman, I've received a lot of concerns from constituents that indicate that they expect kind of an unfair outcome. And I want to make sure that this is a fair outcome, that I can support the bill moving forward. To me, honestly, this gets me to the point where I'm comfortable with the bill language. Without this, I still have concerns, Mr. Chairman. So I was trying to take a good bill and fix it. Thank you.
Questions, discussion on the amendment? Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to ask a question. Just and reasonable rates, terms, and conditions to who? Who's, because this is the traditional language, I think, that's used in rate setting. And they might interpret it as meaning that it requires a rate of return for the investment that the net metering custom is made, or that you could alternatively interpret it as it's fair to all the other customers, which I think is the intent of the bill, but I'm not sure this amendment doesn't mess that up. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm concerned about what this really does and concerned that it's not really entirely clear.
Any more before we go back to sponsor? Senator Case.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Just and reasonable rates, that is the standard that is embodied in case law and public utility law. They, they derive a rate schedule that is just and reasonable. It's got a huge, long history. I think this is a good change, and I support it. It does, I will say to the good, tall senator that it begs the question of the rate of return. You know, the utilities do get rate of return, so it kind of begs the question that it's fair to the investors in the utility as well as all the ratepayers. And I'm good with that. The reason we're sending this to the Public Utility Commission is because they're experts and we're really not. And this is such a political hot potato. It would be good to have it in the forum where the experts are. So I do support this change. And for folks that are listening in, it came, the good senator from Laramie came up with the idea just a few minutes ago, honestly. And I think it's a good one, so I haven't had the time to really send it to people that have been following this on my end, but I think it'll be an acceptable change and they'll appreciate it. I really do. So I support it. I welcome all of us taking this journey. It's the right thing to do right now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Okay, back to the sponsor. Okay, question being called for third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 92. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Division Call the chairs in doubt. All those in favor stand. It was 23-7. 5 noes. Thank you. Back on the bill. Back on the bill, Senate File 92, third reading. All those, roll call, sorry.
Third reading roll call, Senate File 92. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Whitman? Aye. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter?
Aye.
Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Garoop? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Kinsky? No. Kolb? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? No. McCune excused. Nethercott? Conflict? Pappas? No. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll? No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 92, 18 aye, 11 no, 1 excused, 1 conflict.
By your vote, Senate File 92 has passed the Senate. Next bill up for our consideration, Senate File 136. Clerk, please read it in.
Senate File 136, Property Tax Relief Assessment Rate Reduction, sponsored by Senator Beitman, an act relating to taxation.
Senator Beitman.
Not my amendment.
Oh, Driscoll. Senator Driscoll, go ahead.
Could I have the amendment read in, please?
Please read in the amendment.
Senate File 136, third reading amendment number 1, page 1, line 2, after.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 136. Folks won't rehash much. I was not here Friday. This amendment went down. If you're going to do any type of thing with property tax, we need to have a relief valve here to make sure we reaffirm it in case we've made a bad mistake. I bring it back to you and I ask you to affirmatively look at this. We really have never done anything. This bill is one of the more significant bills we're going to do this year if you're going to pass it. And we really don't know long-term where this may affect cities, towns, schools, the whole deal, going down the yard, down the deal. The prudent thing to do is to sunset it. And if it's working right and good, it'll be easy to bring it back and pass it. If not, we probably shouldn't have it there. So not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I ask for your affirmative vote on this. It puts it in a better place. That I'd stand for questions.
Discussion, third reading amendment number 1, Senate File 13. Senator Beitman, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. I'll be on and against. I see what the bringer of the amendment's trying to do here, but, you know, ultimately, the 67th legislature has, you know, this is a policy choice for the 67th. If you want to you know, if a later legislature thinks we made a mistake, they certainly can come in and correct that mistake without a sunset. I think the sunset, you're really limiting the relief to 3 tax years, and you're going to make it really hard for the people coming in 2026 to keep this going. They'll have to fight this fight all over again. And I just think, I don't see fair market values decreasing anytime soon. I think they're going to have this very issue again in 2026. I think hamstringing that legislature coming in, that they're going to have to fight this front and center again is not good policy. And for that, that's why I'm a no, sir. Thank you.
On the amendment, questions or discussion on the amendment? Let's go Driscoll, Scott. Okay, Scott's still standing. Senator Scott.
Mr. President, I'm going to ask for the yeas and nays. Mr. President, this amendment is designed, I think, to make it easier, amongst other things, makes it easier to pass the bill. I'm hoping that the people that might defeat this and say, let's make this a permanent tax cut, will then have the courage of their convictions and vote for the bill. So I'm asking for the yeas and nays.
We had not, let's go back over here then to Senator Pappas. You're on hold, Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm on and for the amendment. I'm not really a big fan of the bill, but the amendment at least puts some sideboards on it. I do see a lot of unintended consequences, as my good senator from Devil's Tower has said. In committee, listened to the testimony, and frankly, I think that there's a lot of unintended consequences to doing this, and I know the intent is good, to give relief to our taxpayers, but I don't think our constituents realize what's going to happen by reducing the taxes to their local communities. All right, those are the folks that are going to suffer. The local taxing authorities won't have the money to do what they need to do because there's nothing to backfill them here, right? There's nothing in here that says, oh yeah, the state's we're gonna, and I heard the argument that we're only cutting down the increase, right? But that might not happen next year or the year after. So I really see some grave consequences down the road. So while this amendment makes it a little more palatable, I still think, frankly, it's bad tax policy. And you're going to go home and you're going to vote yes on this because you want your constituents to say, oh, look, I voted a tax increase for you. You're going to feel good about it, but they don't realize what's going to happen to them in their local communities. And they don't realize that this is a huge change in how we're going to do business when it comes to the local taxing authorities and their special districts and everybody who shares in that pie. So just be cautious. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That'll work. Thank you. Anyone else on the amendment? On the amendment, let's go back to the sponsors. Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wise words from Bates Grant. It was a good one. I appreciate what he's done. I will tell you, I'm going to vote no on the bill, regardless of this passes. If any of you are worried about it, I will be a no on the bill. This is not good policy. Folks, this is not good policy. And I will tell you, for any of you that know history, look back, and if you think that the market's going to go straight up, stay going straight up, you probably haven't lived in Wyoming for a long time. I can tell you in my reasonably short, which is getting to be longer all the time, I've watched assessed valuations go up and down consistently, and they don't go straight up. The other part I'm going to tell you is I don't know if the sponsor and the people called the cities and towns and visited with them, but I have now. And I can tell you, most of them don't know what's about to hit them. So if you call your local town up, say, what did you bring in last year in your property tax? And do you understand that you're about to take a major cut? And almost none of them know that. They're not out here lobbying because they didn't know about it. And I will tell you, the same as you and me, if you've eaten lunch lately, if you've bought anything lately, it's not news to know that our inflation rate's 8% last year plus. We're going to roll it back to where they don't get to share in that inflation. They're actually going to take a cut in their budget. Even though it's not a cut, it's there. And the pain is real on property tax. I understand that. It's real. We need some reform. Do we need reform for the richest and the best that can pay it easily at the expense, if you live in a town like Hewlett, of being able to have a police car and ambulance? That's what we're talking about. So I encourage us to pursue all ways we can to get relief to those who need it. But let's not penalize the communities we live in because of what we've done. I encourage you to pass the amendment, and then we'll talk about the bill. Thank you.
On the amendment, ayes and nays called for. Roll call.
Roll call, third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 136. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? No. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? No. Brennan? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? Aye. French? No. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Kinski? No. Cole? No. Landon? Aye. Larson? No. McCune excused. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz? No. President Driscoll? Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. On the amendment, 18 aye, 12 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, third reading amendment number 1, Senate File 13, has passed. Back on the bill, Senate File 136. Senator, Floor Leader Hicks.
Mr. President, I have struggled with this and struggled with this and struggled with this. I think it's appropriate and I think it's inappropriate. And so, Mr. Chairman, I think for each and every one of us, we need to understand the implications to your local communities and the folks you represent. And I've listened to my colleagues, and we truly have a problem in some areas in the state of Wyoming. And I commend the bringer of the bill. Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, he was dealt a situation where he has a blunt instrument for what it needs as a surgical procedure. And so, Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to do is you have a handout on your desk. And so this is so everybody understands the consequences of your actions and how this may produce. So what I'd first ask you to do is turn over where it says monthly health price indexes for the U.S. from January 91 to present. So, Mr. Chairman, that shows the inflation of the annually adjusted price index for houses, and this is a U.S.-wide average. But what I want to bring your attention to is when you get to November of '06, so starting in 2007, Mr. President, housing prices in this country went down. It coincided with the last recession that we had, Mr. President, and they stayed below their previous value for 8 years. Now that's a nationwide average. After that, they start to come up at the same rate of decline that you saw before that. And then we get to 2001 and you see this meteoric rise. And we all know that was the COVID pandemic, the influx of money and the refugees leaving other states. But I want you to look at that little dip right there in the September of 2022 date. Does anybody not think that we're either in a recession or going into a recession? So, Mr. Chairman, that's the big picture thing. The 10-year average, so if we look from 2012 to 2022, the average nationwide was a 7.6% increase. But you can see most of that was driven by the last 2 years. Prior to that, we were back down around that 4%, 4 to 5% a year increase. But Mr. Chairman, specific to how does this bill affect your counties, I want you to turn the page. And so flip over. And so what this is a copy of the 2022 assessed valuation. But what I did, I went back from the Department of Revenue and I took the 2019 value and I took the 2022 value. So the differential there is 3 years. And how much did the assessed valuation of a residential home in your county go up in 3 years? So those numbers that you see on the left-hand column, that's the average year over year. So every year, that's the average residential price went up by that much. The next number over is just the 3-year total. But I want you to focus on the column on the left, which is the 3-year average. Now keep in mind that the nationwide average was 7.6. That was the nationwide average. If you look down at the very bottom of the page, it'll say, the average for the state of Wyoming over the last 3 years was 9.47%. So we're above the national average, but that's an average statewide. So let's go back to the column to the left, Mr. Chairman. So this is what happened in your county. And so we see Albany County had an increase in 3-year average price increase of 7.8, almost real close to the nationwide average. Bighorn 5.67, Campbell 4.67, Carbon 4.3, well below both the national and the statewide average of increase. You can go all the way down there, you look at the low with Sweetwater County, and you look at the high, right next to it is Teton County, 40%, versus if we took an average annual, so Sweetwater County averaged 3% a year, Teton was 13.33% a year. And so what we have is we have this disparity. We have these counties where property tax is absolutely essential. And then you have these counties like Sweetwater, Carbon, and my colleague talked about in his election cycle, property taxes was the #1 issue. I represent Carbon and Sweetwater County. That's the 2 counties that I represent. They happen to be 2 of the lowest 3 in the entire state. I never heard a single word about somebody worried about their property taxes. It didn't come up, and I've consulted with, Mr. Chairman, I've consulted with every one of our members in the delegation, but the implications are clear. There's 4 counties that are over the Wyoming average and 9, roughly 7 that are either above or slightly the same. But this is the implication of this bill back on your county, Mr. Chairman. So just make sure you understand where your constituents sit within this whole scenario. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further discussion? All right. We are on the bill. Go ahead, Senator Case.
Mr. Chairman, there's been a sea change in the Revenue Committee, and that's a good thing. Change is a good thing. But one thing about Wyoming is we always see change. If we think something's going to last, we are going to be dead wrong. We are the most heavily dependent on our mineral tax structure of any state in the country, except for possibly Alaska. That is the most volatile of revenue streams. We have, again, with our exception of our friends to the far north, the most volatile tax structure, the worst ups and downs, hard riding, fast breaking, and we are transitioning. We had a bill earlier about solar power. The whole country is moving away from the things that we have wanted to sell and sold well for a long time. Fossil fuels are going to be under continuing scrutiny. Coal, even if we keep plants alive, they won't be dispatched unless there's nothing else available, because they'll always go for the free electrons. And coal requires fuel. So in any dispatch order, it starts to fall out. That means we're going to sell a lot less coal, even if the plants stay alive. And that is more than a bit doubtful. This is the exact time when we should be preparing for these times ahead, making our tax structure more unbalanced, more dependent on fossil fuels and carbon production is not good policy. We need to broaden our tax base and prepare solidly for Wyoming's best years, which we don't know what they are, but they're ahead of us. This doesn't help us to get there.
Anderson and then Senator Cooper in that order, please. Wait, Senator Anderson, there you go. Okay.
Mr. Acting President, I think this bill has good intentions, and we all want to give our constituents some tax relief, but I'm afraid it goes the wrong way. This bill hits our counties, cities, and towns, and special districts and community colleges where they shouldn't be hit. They shouldn't be taking the hit. It should be our general fund that's paying for this, so I'll be a no. Thank you.
Over to Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The implications to our community colleges in the different districts. In my district, it's gonna cost us $500,000 to $700,000 per year in each of those two community colleges. In the other richer counties, such as where the maker of this bill comes from, the cost is going to be the same, but they've got a little more to work with. My counties are some of these lower ones on the sheet here, and then the other thing I'm looking at is the price of natural gas right now. Price of natural gas right now is 28% of what it was 6 months ago. That's how much it's fallen. So it's fallen 70% in 6 months. So this big windfall we're having statewide and property tax, whatever you want to call it, it's coming to a screeching halt, whether we like it or not. It's happening. We're in the dead of winter, and our natural gas prices across the state are down by 70%. So there's just so many implications to this thing that are, to me, it's a great tax for the counties that are doing well, but it's a death knell for the small communities, the small schools, and the 5 or 6 of the really struggling counties in the state. Thank you.
Senator Salazar, then we'll go Senator Scott to the president. Go ahead, Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I've heard loud and clear from my Senate district. We all have different Senate districts, but I can tell you the number one issue for my Senate district is property tax help. And I go back to the statement that was made a few days ago that we have so many of these bills coming to us. I'm just afraid at the end of the day, we're not going to have anything. And I simply could not go back to my constituency at the end of this session with nothing. There's no perfect way. There's no perfect way. But this is the best way of the bills that I've seen that give actual property tax relief to my boss, the people who sent me here, and I support this bill.
Senator Scott?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to look at it in a couple of different ways. But looking at my particular county, we're one of the lower ones on this chart. We're 5.3% increase over those 3 years. And for the majority of my constituents, they can afford the property tax. The relief would be nice, but it is not essential to them. But what I hear from my constituents when I go and ask them is the people that get bitten by the increases, even the lower rate of increases that we're having, is particularly the people that have retired on a fixed income. They budget a certain amount of taxes, and then it steadily goes up and up and up and up, and there isn't any relief. And looking at the thing more broadly than my county, with the sunset that we just put on that I oppose, but I want to take advantage of it, Mr. Chairman, since it's there, that gives you relief for, as I read it, 3 years. The bill stands now. And that gives us time to get ourselves in a constitutional position to be able to have a more targeted relief that maybe gets to the people that need it the most. And this gets us there right away during the peak of our current boom. When we can afford to backfill, and we've got plenty of opportunity to do that, when we can afford to be a little more economical in the way we run our state government and use that money to support our local people. So for all those reasons, Mr. Chairman, I urge us to pass the bill.
Mr. President, and then back to the floor leader, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Still on and opposed. The last statement, once again, I keep saying Bates Creek runs pretty wise waters. The programs he talks about for the poor and the people that can't afford to pay it, we have that program in place right now. It's a rebate program. It's there. If they care to step up to the window and apply for it, that's there. If you're old, you're poor, or you're in a bad situation, that program's in place in the state of Wyoming, Mr. Chairman, as we speak. It's there. What we're talking about is a broad program that lowers it on a bunch of people that absolutely, it's just a windfall for them. I can tell you one of the good counties across the state up there where the big peaks lay, they're giggling about this one. They're giggling. Guys that got the $10 million houses, they're going to get a huge rebate back. You know what the effect on them is? It's almost zero because it's a recapture district for the schools. And so what you're really doing is you're going to take that up by the white cap peaks and you're going to give them a double-digit $1 million refund that the entire state pays for. And folks, that's not right. This is much more complicated than just a refund. It affects school recapture districts on a big, big scale. And, you know, we're rushing to it. I challenge anybody that's out there as far as people crying about their taxes. Ask them how much it actually is. The interesting part is, I read that back on a $300,000 house. It's not a lot of money, folks. They're acting like the sky's falling and we're taxing them out of the world. I get it, they're paying some more. We all do. I read the list off the day before I left here. Wyoming still ranks dead last in the region on property taxes. Dead last. So you want to mess with our tax deals around, be prepared. Spent a lot of time on this floor fighting down personal income taxes, sales taxes, all kinds of increases. If you want to invite an increase to taxes in Wyoming, lower them down and then we'll figure out where else you can pay from. So think about that. Where would you like it to come from? Because we will continue to operate government and you can either pay for it out of a personal income tax or some other area, but you will pay as the economy rolls back. We heard some really good words from top of the mountain. And I really believe that's true, is the economy's not going higher, it's going lower in the state of Wyoming right now. We caught it right on the cusp, and it happens to be while we're in session. Please don't make us sorry for what we've done to come back and have to figure out how we're going to inflict punishment on the state.
Let's go floor leader and then Beitman, Kolb in that order. Mr. Floor Leader Hicks.
So, Mr. Chairman, real quick, so let's talk about what this is. This is an escalation in your property values, and you're taxed on that. Mr. Chairman, at a certain level, that's not a bad thing, because that's called equity that you build in your home. So if your home increased in taxes because it went up in price, you're worth more. Your home is worth more. That's what that assessed valuation is getting at. And so if I have 4% increase in the value of my home year over year, but I'm paying 4.5% interest on a mortgage, the real value of that home is going down 0.5% every year. This is what we have going on in Sweetwater County. They're losing the value in their home due to inflation. So what you really want to do is a little bit of appreciation in that value. That's why homes are such a good investment. Over a long time, they increase in value. So to say that all increase is bad is not necessarily true, because it's your wealth, it's your value, it's how you market that. So when we look at these numbers, even when we look at 4 or 5%, that may be a little bit, but it's still below the national average. But your net worth is worth more because your house is worth more. That's why you're paying tax. Mr. Chairman, I get it. If I was from one of these counties that had experienced double-digit property tax 3 years in a row, I would be down here and I would vote for this bill. But Mr. Chairman, I don't represent those counties. So I hold nothing against however you vote. You're going to vote for your constituents. There's places this is real. There's places that it's not. My concern is this is a blunt tool and it's going to hammer everybody. And what the effect of it does is basically a 10 or 10.5% reduction in those tax values for those small rural districts out there, small counties. It's going to reduce those property taxes that they receive for those basic functions to maintain county roads, maintain your weed and pest districts, your museum districts, your solid waste disposal districts, your water conservancy districts. Your rural healthcare districts are going to take a 10%, 10.5% reduction in what they get today. That's my concern. I'm all about the property tax, and I understand my colleagues with these double-digit things, but this is a one-size-fits-all that just doesn't work for my constituents. Thank you, Mr. President.
Over to Senator Beitman and then Kolb coming up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and still for the bill, what's left of it. Since the body is in full retreat mode, I'm going to try to get the forces back in battle position here. This is, you throw up, like my good friend says, throw a turd in the punch bowl and everybody starts throwing them in. So I got to stand up and fight for this bill. This is an important bill for the people of Wyoming, all across the state. Do not forget, like I said many times, residential assessed valuations have increased $2.3 billion since 2019. Real money. And we're crying about special districts, we're crying about community colleges, we got taxpayer-funded lobbyists sitting up there, but we don't have any people from the public here. We are their lobbyists. We are all they got. But the people that lobby us day in and day out and send us all these scary emails about, oh, government's not going to be able to survive anymore if you guys do a 1% lower of the valuation of the fair market value. The sky is not going to fall, Mr. Chairman. We are cutting the rate of growth. Government is funded. We are in a supplemental budget with a huge surplus that we're getting ready to spend the hell out of. This is taxpayer money that needs to go back to the taxpayers. It's only right. So enough with the sky is falling. Enough of this. We already got the sunset now. This is only a 3-year tax relief package. And I got half of the minority party with me on this one. Half. I'll take 1 out of 2. But the majority party, come on, guys, get it together. We're the majority party here. This is a bedrock issue for our constituents who voted us into office. We have to deliver, Mr. Chairman. And this is not a blunt force weapon. It's a constitutional weapon. It's probably the only one we're going to have available to us, because amending the Constitution, Mr. Chairman, takes years, if it even happens. So you vote this down, we're probably not getting any tax relief for our constituents. As it is what it is. Another year goes by, another year we don't deliver. But guess who's happy? Taxpayer-funded lobbyists that represents the counties, they're happy they did their job. We're not here to represent the county commissioners or the colleges or the special districts. We represent the taxpayers who fund all that. Keep that in mind, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kolb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the upper chamber. This is a chamber where we're supposed to think clearly, have time to consider. I've thought clearly, and I clearly believe and know the future of Wyoming will change quickly, as it did this time. So what do we do? What do we do right now? Throw away all the money? Just give it back because, well, there's no consideration for anything else? We do fund a lot of things. We do fund all the districts within, like, my Senate district. And my Senate district, has not seen an increase. But I think the future is what we have to think about. As this money changed, it will change again, like the weather in Wyoming. And I think I will do a disservice to my constituents by choosing to take an opportunity that we have now and just for the sake of beating someone else and spending the money somewhere else. My hope and desire is that we save this money, that we put it in a PMT, put it in some place where it's inviolate for the future of Wyoming. That's what I care about. Not today, not tomorrow, but 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And if this goes down as a program that damages us, frankly, I'll be known for that. And I don't want to be known for that. I want to be known as a thoughtful person, someone who took time, somebody who believes, frankly, what my mom told me when I was a kid. And that was simply, don't let that money burn a hole in your pocket. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let's go French and Cooper in that order. Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I offer up a partial solution as a county commissioner for 18 years. One of the big things that came to all the counties was direct distribution. And right now that's at $105 million, I believe. I'll probably try to get an amendment into the budget somewhere to double that or possibly triple that. That will help these concerns because that money is sent out to all 23 counties on a formula based on roads, population, a number of things. And I know in our county that money went to run the government entirely. We fully funded the 3 libraries in our county, the fair, Parks and Rec, museum. We helped fund crisis intervention, the senior citizen centers, 3 of them across our county. The number of things, I think there was 8 or 10 different entities that we helped fund. So it's a partial solution for the cities, towns, and counties. Does it get to the others that have a mill levy? Not all of them. It's a partial solution, but I think we need to increase that to the cities, towns, and counties. That'll address much of the concern on we're taking tax base away and we're not backfilling it. This would do that. Thank you.
Senator Cooper, then over to Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm listening really close to what my colleague right next to me is saying here. And I'm agreeing with him nearly 100%. I see some holes in this tax as we're putting it forward, in this tax relief. One of the things that I'm seeing is there's a handful of families in 2 or 3 counties to the west and to the north central that are among the richest in the nation. And we're gonna give them a massive tax break that would backfill these community colleges and these other big losses. If we can go forward with this, you know, one of the things that I've seen in the last week was a lot of bills that talked about a problem and it brought a little Band-Aid, but it didn't bring a solution to the problem. This isn't necessarily a solution to the problem. It's a Band-Aid, and it's a really good Band-Aid. But if we can work with the thought for a longer solution for the 3 years to backfill out of the budget, even though we know that these mineral revenues are going to go down. They're going down right now. They're down from what they were 6 months ago. I think if we can work together with that plan, I can stand behind this. But if all we're doing is taking from the rich to give to the rich, I'm not very good with that, because they're taking out of this pocket and putting it in this pocket. But in our small towns, in our small communities, we're taking. This is not giving anything back. We're taking from those communities. We're giving a little bit of relief to the lower end taxpayers, but we're giving massive relief to the higher end taxpayers. And I think we have to go forward with the tax relief, but I think we have to go forward with it thinking that we're going to backfill this out of the budget and try to make this work to the betterment of everybody. Thank you, sir.
Senator Hyde?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to stand in support of good colleague here bringing this bill from Sheridan County. I had high hopes. I was excited that we could actually get some tax relief. And as he said, what's left of this bill, I'm disappointed on it as much as he is. I'm down here. I ran on a platform of limited government, and this is one way to shrink government. I think, the talk about one size fits all, I understand that, but I think the one size shrinks government overall. And, I've got an old legislator that passed away, was here for 35 years from Goshen County, and I remember him saying government ran the best when it had the least amount of money. And so I'm in favor of this bill, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion on Senate File 136, back to the president.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For my second and last time, I'm just going to do a couple semi-corrections, at least from my end. As far as being lobbied, folks, I haven't opened my email this morning. I had no lobbying from county commissioners of the cities. In fact, Thursday, when I pulled out of here, there was a mayor of one of the largest cities in Cheyenne who was out in the hallway, and I invited him back to my office. And the debate was going on the floor, and he said, what are you guys on? We're on the tax relief bill. He said, what's it about? And I said, how much money did your town take in last year off property taxes? I believe the number he gave me was north of 80%. I said, do you understand, and this is before the amendments came, that your budget will be cut in this city, one of the largest in Wyoming, by over 20%. His mouth fell open. He hadn't been lobbied. He didn't know about it, didn't know it was coming. And so I'm going to tell you, as far as lobbying, I don't think a whole lot's happened. I'd like to know how many of you been hit up, but I have not been shoved on by people at all. Cities, towns, I've looked at it myself, and I meant what I said is when you live in a town the size of Northeast up there by Devil's Tower, our city budget's limited like you would not believe. We're talking about whether you buy ambulances or police cars. And, I'm one of the ones I'm willing to pay my part on the inflation. I happen to want an ambulance to haul one of my family out when something happens, or a police car to help me. This is all a part of it. The other part I'm going to tell you, as far as how great things are, good good senator off the top of the mountain. Have any of you been following our Craig reports? We're $250 million less than we were in October. Our state income, right now, it's on an incline. We actually don't have the money, as we talk about other bills today, we don't have the money that we had in October. Because the state economy is actually not doing this, it's doing this. And it's doing it at a pretty steep rate. Yes, we have excesses. Were those all paid by our property tax owners? Some of it. Biggest part of them, when you go through the list that was handed out to us, if you look through that, it's still our mineral industry, folks. It's people out there that are paying our bills. They pay the 90% of the taxes are paid. They still pay them for us. Are you hearing them down here saying we want ours lowered by a whole bunch? They're saying we want stability. We don't mind paying some more, but we want stability. What we don't want you to do is lower them and then come back and hit us with a big increase in a bad time. Let's be really careful about what we're doing here. Thank you.
Senator Anderson.
I agree with the senator from Devil's Tower. I have not heard a word from anybody of my cities, towns, counties, community colleges, or any special districts. I've not been lobbied one bit, so I take exception to what the senator from Tongue River says.
Further discussion? Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, Mr. President, past president, sir.
Retired.
I'll get it. I'm trying to figure out, just exactly what to name you up there. But anyway, great respect. I don't want to beat this dead horse anymore. I just wanted to reiterate the fact that I really want to vote for this bill. I really do. I think the intent of the bringer of the bill is nothing but pure. I want to be able to go home and say that we've done some things with property taxes, but it's interesting, the first three people that lobbied me in my community for a decrease were all out-of-staters that moved here and bought houses in my community of 800,000 and above. And they were all asking me about, over in this state, we did this or that or whatever. And I'm thinking, I finally said to him, do you know why we're paying higher taxes? Because all you folks that are moving here and buying these big fancy houses. And they just kind of smiled and said, yeah, you're right. So ultimately, I have to err on the side of those folks that are running our cities and our towns and our communities and our colleges and our schools and our special districts, because they are constituents as well. And some of them may actually lose their jobs if this bill, I think they could. That's how tight. Our cities, you got to remember, they don't have taxing ability. They can't tax themselves. We threw away the grocery tax bill, and I would love to trust that we could get an amendment through the budget, but I'm just not sure we could. If I knew we could, and I could, be assured of that, I would vote for this, but I'm just not sure that that's going to happen. So with that, I would vote against the bill. Thank you.
Back to Senator Steinmetz, and then over to Senator Grew. Go ahead, Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the bill, and I am one of the smaller counties, but to me, it's not so much about all of the other things we've talked about, but is a dollar better in the pocket of the person that earned it, or is it better in the pocket of the government? So that's one consideration. But secondly, last budget session, in the actual budget session, we gave the cities, towns, and counties $120 million, more than the 105. And I think there's another 26 million in this budget as well. So we have been generous. We have been generous with our community colleges. There's a cost adjustment for inflation in there for them in this budget, and we'll be hearing about that soon. And so if we want to add more to backfill that, I think we're all very open to that, but I would urge us to pass this legislation as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, over to the divided minority party. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we finish this up, and I too don't want to beat this in too much longer, but I want to make sure everybody knows I am in support of this. I am the half of the caucus that the good bringer of the bill was talking about. But I want you to all know very clearly who I'm voting for and what I'm voting for. I've talked a lot about the poor, the elderly. and we are helping them, and I thank this body for reaching out, trying to help them. We're going to have some more opportunities to do that as we go. I know the good chairman has been working diligently on it, and appreciate his efforts. And yes, this bill passes today, which I hope it does. Some very wealthy people are going to get a very big tax break. That is true. A lot of them are my constituents. Thank you. But that's not what I'm voting for. As a matter of fact, if there was a way, and the good bringer and I have talked about this, the bringer of the bill talked about it, if there was a way that we could tear this out, I'd be all over it, but I know that's not possible today. We should be, as a good senator from across the Wind River said, from my country said, we should be having a much larger discussion about taxes in general and what we could do about it in a more global scape. That's the honest way we should be doing this, but we're not there yet. So at the end of the day, I'm left with a choice. Besides the elderly and the poor and the very wealthy, there's a very narrow group in my area, working people. They're getting driven out of my county in droves. They're getting squeezed by high property values. They're getting squeezed by taxes. Yes, they sell out and they make a buck, but they don't want to leave. They don't want to leave. They want to stay. They want to work. They want to be plow drivers. They want to be teachers. They want to be the folks in the grocery store. They don't mind living in what we call poverty with a view. But they need to have a chance. And in the last few years, that chance has been snatched away. And the only opportunity, the only chance I see to help them is this bill. So I'm in favor of this bill for that reason. They need help. They're the folks I see at the coffee shop. They're the folks that have been telling, please, I get the same calls from those rich people. Oh, Jesus. And it's like, yeah, whatever. But the folks at the coffee shop, the folks, the old guys, the old bulls that sit at the table, every town's got one, and I do too. And they sat down and told me, help us. So I'm voting yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further discussion. This is Senate File 136. Further discussion? Question called. Roll call, please. Okay, for the record, Senate File 136 having been read 3 separate times. The question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Roll call, Senate File 136. Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Dogstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru? Aye. Hicks? No. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? No. Kinski? Aye. Kolb? No. Landon? No. Larson? Aye. McEwen, excuse. Nethercott? Nethercott, aye. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll? No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 136, 18 aye, 12 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 136, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 136 has passed the Senate. Next bill up for consideration, Senate File 134. Please read it in. Oh, did you have a privilege? Go ahead, Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Privilege of the floor.
Please do.
We have to our right a county commissioner from my county, Park County, Lee Livingston. If you'd all give him a big round of applause.
Commissioner Livingston, welcome to the Senate. Okay, please read in the bill.
Senate File 134, Right to Farm Real Estate Disclosures, sponsored by Senator Bouchard, an act relating to property and agriculture.
There is an amendment. Please read it in.
Senate File 134, third reading amendment number 1, corrected copy, page 4, lines 1 through 14, in.
Senator Bouchard, take care of the first reading amendment. Go ahead.
Yeah, if there's no objection, I'd like to withdraw that amendment.
Okay, absent objection, third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 134 has been withdrawn. There is another amendment. Please read in the next amendment, please.
Senate File 134, third reading amendment number 2, delete.
Okay, Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move number 2 amendment to Senate File 134 and ask for your favorable consideration. Look, I know this bill is probably boring to a lot of you. I've watched many cases where these nuisance, I like to call them Nancy nuisance people, come and complain about farmers. What this bill, the intention of this bill was to bring an actual disclosure, not a disclosure about the right to farm, but disclosure of real life things that happen on agricultural land. And so I brought down a much skimmed down version of what was in the bill originally. So, and it would just stay there, but what's already amended would stay there, and this would come right after it. Accordingly, this property may be subject to the inconveniences or discomforts associated with agricultural operations, including but not limited to noise, odors, flies, dust, machinery operation of any kind during a 24-hour period, including aircraft, the presence of animal waste, and the application of fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides. The reason that this is important isn't because we're trying to babysit and hold someone's hand at the purchase of a property. This is at the end of when someone comes and says, I don't like that farmer that lives next to me, and I'm gonna do everything I can to put them out of business. And when it ends up in front of a court, it says, Mr. or Mrs. Nuisance, did you get a disclosure that says there would be a piece of farmland that has these operations going on? And they would have to answer the judge with an affirmative. The whole purpose of this is to stop such actions. And understand, please understand, body, that there's an organized effort to stop farmers, to stop agricultural land. Look at what's going on in the meat industry. We hear everything in the world of why we should be eating fake meat. Media is against it, against real meat. Cow farts, everything in the world they use is against the farmer. I could go on about all these organized efforts, but I won't. This amendment is simple, voted up, voted down. It's just a disclosure saying we farm here. And if in the event it goes to court, it's so a judge sides with the farmer, so they're left alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Question on the amendment. Back to Senator Nethercott.
Thank you. I just want some clarity here that if this amendment were to pass, voted up, voted down, but it does not, well, let me ask a question of the sponsor of the amendment. If this amendment were to pass, or the bill passes in total, does that waive or prevent the homeowner who would want to sue for nuisance right to sue for nuisance?
Let's gather any more and go back to the sponsor. Any other questions? Okay, back to you, Senator Bouchard.
Point of order.
Oh, sorry, missed you. Senator Jones, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, this laundry list of items in a disclosure is not typical in Wyoming real estate. It seems this was patterned after the state that borders the Pacific Ocean And well, let's look at this from another angle. In residential real estate, take my neighborhood for example. I live within a mile of several public schools and BLM land. We do not have a laundry list of disclosures as to the pitfalls of this. In my neighborhood, you can hear the school bells go off, you can hear the children laughing, you can hear side-by-sides heading to public lands at all hours, and you can also hear guns going off from target practice. We do not give a laundry list disclosure of these items. When you give a list of items, you cannot possibly list everything, and there's where the problem lies. Disclosures are just that. They aren't meant to frighten the buyer away. I am an active licensed realtor in Wyoming, and I believe the only one in this room. I am a no on this amendment.
Thank you. Further discussion? Taking it back to you, Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, as far as the ability to sue, I've never challenged that that would stop anyone from suing. Again, there are numerous court cases on this. I didn't just pull this out of the air. This is how an industry protects itself by having language like this put in. This was lobbied in several states. This has also been challenged in several states and courts. Again, I didn't just pull this out of the air. This isn't unfounded. As far as a sales agenda to keep this off, I think we really need to look at what's going on here. We've got one side that sells and says we can't have disclosures. And we have another side that I'm trying to protect the ag interests of our state. This isn't going to hurt anybody selling a house. In fact, that was stated. This isn't going to scare a buyer off. Buyer's probably buying next to ag because they want to be there. We're only looking at the small percentage who become activists. And that's what we're trying to do is head them off now. This isn't about if, it's when this becomes more of an issue in Wyoming. Vote it up, vote it down. Vote your conscience, vote for your constituents.
Ready for the question? This is a question called on the third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 134. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. No. Ayes have it. Amendment is passed. Back on the bill. Any further discussion on the bill? Senate File 134. Question being called. Senate File 134 having been read 3 separate times. The question is, should the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Senate File 134, third reading roll call. Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Whitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. Dockstader? Aye. Ellis? No. French? Aye. Murphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? No. Jones? No. Kinski? No. Kolb? No. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McCune excused. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll? Aye. Barlow? No to aye. Baldwin, no to aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 134, 20 aye, 10 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 134, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 134 has passed the Senate. Next bill up for consideration, a resolution. Please read it in.
Senate Joint Resolution 2, recognizing the service of Lester C. Hunt, sponsored by Senator Case. A joint resolution recognizing United States Senator and Wyoming Governor and Secretary of State Lester Callaway Hunt as a consummate model to public servants for his distinguished career, his commendable civility and courage, and his service to Wyoming and the United States of America.
Amendment, please read it in.
Senate Joint Resolution 2, third reading amendment number 1, page 4, line 10, in.
Senator Case on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate Joint Resolution 2. Mr. Chairman, you'll recall when we first discussed this that it was suggested by, I think, our good majority floor leader that on page 4, lines 10 through 14, that it wasn't clear that that was about politics, and that he was suggesting that there was lots of good things that happened at that time. So I got to looking at those lines, and I thought, I think it is pretty clear the way it is. It says, during this dark and harsh period of our nation's political journey. To me, that means that it's about politics here, dirty, nasty politics. But this amendment that I'm bringing was suggested to me this morning, and I think it works. It would say, whereas Lester C. Hunt endured threats, intimidation, and attempted blackmail associated with the excesses of McCarthyism, to which his untimely death can be directly attributed during this dark and harsh period of our nation's political journey, characterized by incivility, irrational political dogma, and unfounded beliefs. That's what the amendment does.
Thank you. Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think this amendment addresses my concern and narrowly focuses as to what the dark side of our politics at the time was McCarthyism. So on and for the amendment.
Anything else on the amendment? Okay, further discussion on the amendment. All those in favor of second reading amendment number 1 to third reading, excuse me, all those in favor of third reading amendment number 1 of Senate Joint Resolution 2, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. No. Amendment has passed. Back on the bill. Any further discussion, Senator Case or Senator Hicks?
Mr. Chairman, I rise reluctantly. I'm going to be a no vote on this, and I'm going to explain why. It's not because of the merits of the resolution. I think Lester C. Hunt deserves recognition by this body, but it's the provision on page 6, section 1, in the last sentence. It says, with this resolution, the Wyoming legislature remembers and joins ourselves, rededicates ourselves to democracy, civility, decency, and truth. And Mr. Chairman, I'm going to explain why. When I look at our history, and there was some suggestion that I was for some reason trying to cancel out some political party or some form of politics. And so let me explain to you why. So Mr. Chairman, at the culmination of the Continental Convention, the Constitutional Convention, as they were walking out, there was a woman that called out to Dr. Ben Franklin and said, "What form of government did you give us, Dr. Franklin?" And he said, "A republic, if you can keep it." Mr. Chairman, in our Constitution, it says every form, Article 4, Section 4, is entitled to a Republican form of government. Mr. Chairman, our founders knew the difference between democracy and a republic. And so I'll share with you some of their thoughts. Alexander Hamilton, real liberty is not found in the extremes of democracy, but in moderate government. If we incline too much to democracy, we shall shoot into the monarchy and some other form of dictator. Thomas Jefferson, a democracy is nothing more than mob rule where 51% of the people may take away the rights of the other 49. James Madison argued, democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence, contention, have been incomplete with personal security or the rights of property. John Adams, democracies never last long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. There never was a democracy that never did not commit suicide. Mr. Chairman, Chief Justice John Marshall, between the balance of a republic and a democracy, the difference is like between order and chaos. Mr. Chairman, I can go on and on with quotations of the founders as to why they rejected a democracy. I cannot support, nor will I vote for anything that says I will rededicate ourselves to democracy, when in fact this country was never supposed to be a democracy. I don't know when all of this was canceled out, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if it was an intentional thing, but I cannot vote for something that recognizes us as a democracy. Thank you.
Senator Nethercutt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There appears to be existing confusion over the terms. Yes? Yes? Yes. Probably, like it was for the framers. No doubt. According to a learned treatise the world over, given the existing confusion over terminology, it is not surprising that the framers employed various terms to describe the novel government they proposed. A few months after the adjournment of the Constitutional Convention, James Madison, the future fourth president of the United States, proposed a usage that would have lasting influence within the country through the little elsewhere in Federalist Number 10, our majority floor leader's very favorite, one of 85 essays by Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay, known collectively as the Federalist Papers. Madison defined a pure democracy as a society consisting of a small number of citizens who assemble and administer the government in person. I look to all of you in the chamber. And a republic as a government in which the scheme of representation takes place. That's the definitions. According to Madison, the two great points of difference between a democracy and a republic are first, the delegation of the government in the latter to a small number of citizens elected by the rest. Again, let me read that again. According to Madison, the two great points of difference between a democracy and a republic are, first, the delegation of the government in the latter to a small number of citizens elected by the rest. Secondly, the greater number of citizens and greater sphere of country over which the latter may be extended. In short, for Madison, democracy meant direct democracy and republic meant representative government. How many of you are confused and how many of you care? Was the term confusing then, as it is now? Are we fixating on semantics as opposed to the purpose of the democracy, which I believe most of us in here would agree, in fact, all Americans would agree, that when we say democracy, we mean we, the people, who elect those who act on our behalves. It's an elected form of government with term limits, generally speaking. That's a democracy, we, the people. I appreciate the esoteric debate always of the second senator from the second ivory tower. They're growing all the time in this chamber, and I appreciate it. But again, these nuances don't accurately reflect history. Where those terms were interchangeable and the way they were used was also how the British form of government operated as well. And those terms were used in light of that context. So before we all become historical scholars here, which I hope we do, I again urge you to support this resolution instead of focusing on these subtle esoteric differences in between terminology of our forefathers who had way too much time on their hands.
Further discussion? Back to you, Floor Leader Hicks. Oh, sorry, Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think we accommodated the wishes of the good senator with respect to line 5 on that same page in a previous amendment. Glad to do that. And we changed that to be our republic, our Republican form of government, I believe, in that same paragraph. Democracy, sir, is more generic. It's the fact that free people can express themselves at the ballot box and through their elected representatives. That's the meaning of the term. We did fully accommodate the Republican form of government earlier in the same paragraph, so it's clear. My grandfather used to beat on me exactly like our good majority floor leader is bringing up about the difference between republic and democracy. But in this instance, we're saying we respect the people, we the people. Do you think that's what was happening in 1954? It wasn't. Our commitment to each other, our commitment to our form of government, and our commitment to the demos, the people, remains unchanged. And I hope that we can join together and support this resolution today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, ready for the question? No? Senator Hicks? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, for my second time, and I appreciate my colleague from Laramie County here. I always knew that I come from the cultural capital of Wyoming, but I didn't realize I was from the second ivory tower. So that's a great acknowledgement. I'll take that home to my community as a compliment. Mr. Chairman, what my colleague said is true, but this is not what this says. This says recommit myself to a democracy. And because it is confusion, and you do have to dive into this and understand the ramifications of what a representative democracy is and a pure democracy is. This leaves me as the reader to my interpretation, because it's not clear exactly what kind of democracy we're talking about here. Is this a pure democracy? Is it a representative democracy? What form of democracy are we talking about? I know what form of democracy the founders were talking about. We just had one little modifier in there to identify what we're talking about when we say democracy, other than the broad terminology. I have to go back to the original intent. What did the founders mean? Words matter, people. What was the intent that they used democracy? And I think it was elucidated by Madison and Federalist number 10. I can't ferret that out of the way it's used in this sentence, Mr. President. So I'm going to err in caution that it's not clear to me as to what kind of democracy I'm supposed to be recommitting myself to. So on and against the resolution.
Further discussion on the amendment? Ready for the, Senator Case.
On the bill.
No? Oh, on the bill, excuse me. Okay, on the bill. Do you want to speak some more? Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think I'm out of school here. It's my bill. Second time.
It's all yours, sir.
Thank you. You know, Lester Hunt was a pretty special guy, Mr. Chairman. Wonder what he would be saying right now if he were voting on an amendment, this resolution, for some other colleague that deserved it, and that if we wanted to learn through history, do you think he'd be open to learning through history about what happened in that terrible time of the 1950s, early 1950s? How a man came to take his own life, being blackmailed by his colleagues in the Senate? It's unimaginable. And then to have us talk about quibbling over one word when we have another house. You know, I don't want to lose this amendment over that word, this resolution. It's way bigger than that. Lester Hunt was way bigger than that. This Senate is way bigger than that. Jim Anderson's way bigger than that. Mr. President, one word, in an extraordinary tale that is like one of the most famous moments in our Wyoming history. A man who gave everything that he had. And we're going to quibble over one word? I don't think so, Mr. Chairman. We're going to vote this through.
Okay, ready for the question. Senate Joint Resolution Number 2, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the resolution pass? The Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Third reading roll call, Senate Joint Resolution Number 2, Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Beitman. No. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Brennan. No. Case. Aye. Cooper. Aye. Dockstetter. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Furphy. Aye. Garou. Aye. Hicks. No. Hutchings. No. Ide. No. Jones. Aye. Kinski. Aye. Kolb. No. Landon. Aye. Larson. No. McEwen excused. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. No. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. No. President Driscoll. Aye. French, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate Joint Resolution 2, 20 aye, 10 no, 1 excused.
Senate Joint Resolution Number 2, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate Joint Resolution Number 2 has passed the Senate. Next bill up for consideration, Senate Joint Resolution Number 7. Read it in.
Senate Joint Resolution 7, Support for Taiwan, sponsored by Senator Driscoll, a joint resolution in support of Taiwan.
There is an amendment.
Senate Joint Resolution 7, third reading amendment number 1, page 3, lines 4 through 10, delete.
Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 3, lines 4 through 10, I think we'll make this bill a little bit better, this resolution a little bit better. The problems that I had with it are supporting, the participation of the World Health Organization.
My
International.
apologies, Senator Ide. We gotta have you move it. I was reading your amendment and I missed that. You need to move the amendment.
Oh, okay, excuse me, Mr.
no
Chairman. Let me see if I can do this right. Pardon me? Okay. I move first reading amendment, Senate.
Third reading amendment.
Or third reading amendment. I move third reading amendment, joint resolution 7, and ask for your favorable consideration.
Okay, go ahead and explain now.
So to back up here, it states in here, lines 4 through 10 on page 3, that, we're in agreement with the participation of Taiwan with World Health Organization, a lot of these international organizations, and that we continue to support that. And just a lot of those international organizations, we saw a lot of reasons not to support them over the last couple of years. So that's why I brought this amendment, and I ask for your favor. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Discussion on the amendment, Senator Nethercott. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. Good senators, connecting this deletion to specifically the World Health Organization, I want to take you back to March of 2020, March of 2020. Do you remember where you were? I think 27 of us were right here. I was a few feet away. And I will never forget this memory. Never. And I remember looking forward and listening to the Taiwanese delegate who comes annually to visit. And they annually to visit. And historically, those speeches to the Senate were about economic relationships, beef production, ways that we can be economic partners to each other on trade. This was different, and I took notice of it. I took notice of his demeanor. He was anxious. There was a sense of urgency in his voice and his message, a seriousness. This was not diplomatic relations about selling beef or our enjoyment of Western values. He said, "There's a virus coming." Do you know why Taiwan cares about the virus? Because China gives it to them. They're the first to be affected. They were decimated by SARS. Decimated. That's why they've survived COVID so well. They learned their mistakes from their Chinese partners, their Chinese neighbors. They suffer the consequences in Taiwan. And he said, the virus is coming. And I thought, well, this is different. What is going on? I got on my machine and I Googled, because as you know, when we're in session, the world around us becomes very small and we don't really know what's going on as much as we did. And the first image to appear was a satellite image of Iran, of them creating graves, because they were already being affected by the pandemic. Whether you believe that or not, that's my experience over what happened. And I thought, good grief, what is going on out there? And I took heed of his warning. I hesitate to say this, but he also very specifically said, you need to wear masks. And I thought, this is so odd. This is so odd. And then the session ended. And so did the world. Right? I went back to my office for a few days and everything shut down. And it was the twilight zone, as we all remember. And within the following weeks, President Trump was ordering the Mercy ships to our coastlines just in case. And I thought, what in the world? And this whole journey of the pandemic started with our partnership with Taiwan. For me, it did, of what is about to happen. Again, this is my memory in this chamber from our Taiwanese partner, from the Taiwanese delegate, a warning to me of what was about to happen. To my family, to my friends, to my business, to my state, to this country, and to the world. These relationships make a difference.
President Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was impassioned and good. I fully fall within it. That being said, I don't see where the amendment, it's friendly in my opinion as far as where it goes. I'm good either direction with it. It can fall either way. I'm suspicious if the title was wide enough, the sponsor of the amendment probably would have stretched it far beyond Taiwan. So that being said, voted up, voted down. I don't see as it changes our support for Taiwan one way or the other, whether it's in there or not. So I'll stand for question if someone disagrees with that, but I don't see what that section of it actually totally matters within. Thank you.
Mr. President and sponsor, any further discussion? All right. This is on the amendment. Third reading amendment number 1 to Senate Joint Resolution 7. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. No. The amendment has failed. Back on the bill. Senate Joint Resolution number 7. Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the joint resolution pass? The chief clerk will call the roll.
Third reading roll call, Senate Joint Resolution number 7. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter?
Aye.
Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McCune excused. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate Joint Resolution Number 7, 29 aye, 1 no, 1 excused.
Senate Joint Resolution Number 7, having received affirmative vote of the majority members elected to the Senate, Senate Joint Resolution 7 has passed the Senate. Senator Larson.
Having voted on the prevailing side of Senate File 136, I move for immediate reconsideration of the third reading vote on Senate File 136, Property Tax Relief Assessment Rate Reduction.
Okay, vote for reconsideration. I think you all know the routine. First vote will be for reconsideration, second will be on the bill. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
For reconsideration, Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Beitman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Brennan? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? No. French? No. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Kinsky? No. Cole? Aye. Landon? No. Larson? Aye. McCune excused. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Steinmetz? No. President Driscoll?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed for reconsideration. 7 aye, 23 no, 1 excused.
Reconsideration has failed on Senate File 136, Property Tax Relief Assessment Rate Reduction. Mr. Majority Floor Leader Hicks.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate stand in recess until 2 p.m.
Thank you. Are there any announcements? Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Your committee number 7, Corporations, is going to meet at 12:30 in room W110 to take up Senate File 142, Carbon Capture and Sequestration. That's a continuation of the hearing from Thursday. Tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., I just love the early mornings around the Capitol, Mr. President. We'll take up Senate File, we'll continue our discussion of Senate File 131, prohibition on delivery of unsolicited ballot forms. Then we'll move on to Senate File 153, election security. Then we'll take up Senate File 163, election integrity primary elections. We might truncate the discussion of that because I've committed to get up also Senate Joint Resolution 11, Convention of States, and we're going to definitely try to allow some time for that one. So thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Biden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 3, revenue, will meet tomorrow, Tuesday, January 31st, upon noon recess. Give us about 20 minutes to eat some lunch and take care of some business. In Capitol Extension Room W6, take up the following 3 bills: Senate File 159, Stop ESG, Eliminate Economic Boycott Act; Senate File 172, Stop ESG, State Funds Fiduciary Duty Act; and Senate Joint Resolution 13, Legislative and Executive Authority, Taxation and Spending. Thank you, sir.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Committee number 6, Travel, Wildlife, Recreation, Cultural Resources will meet in the morning at 8 o'clock. We will take a look at 3 bills. This will be at 8 o'clock in the morning. The usual place, W2, Senate File 157, Weed and Pest Mitigation, Tribal Inclusion; 2, Senate File 173, Financial Institutions, similar names; and Senate File 176, Solid Waste Disposal Districts Consolidation.
Senator Schuler. Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Senate Appropriations Committee, Committee number 2, will meet in E301 at 8 a.m. tomorrow to consider the following re-referrals: SF 132, Study of K-12 Education Program; SF 120, Restoration of Civil Rights; and other re-referrals as received.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, Military Affairs, will meet today upon adjournment and W2 and online to consider the following pieces of legislation: Senate File 139, unlawful use of charge card or debit card; Senate File 160, Senate File 164, Public Improvement Contract Requirements Amendments; and Senate File 119, Defend the Guard Act 2, if time allows.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your number 5 committee, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, will meet Tuesday, January 31st on adjournment to consider the following Senate files: Senate File 107, Acquisition, Exchange, and Sale of Trust Lands; Senate File 126, Barbering and Cosmetology Practice Amendments. I know you've had a lot of emails on that one. And Senate File 138, Unemployment Insurance Coverage Period and Reporting.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you. Your Labor and Health Committee number 10 for the Senate will meet just an early notice on Wednesday morning at 7:30 a.m. There's a little bit of shuffling of topics. We're going to finish up Senate File 115, Wyoming Prescription Drug Transparency Act. There'll be no public testimony. That will be working the bill only. That'll be followed by Senate File 162, Grace Smith Medical Freedom Act, and that will be followed by Senate Joint Resolution 10, Right of Healthcare Access.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Senate stands recessed till 2 p.m.